Is the Creality K2 Plus one of the best printers out there? Let's check it out. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Mike, and today we are going to be reviewing the K2 Plus from Creality. Now, I've had this machine for quite a few weeks, and with some of the shorts and things that I've made, it's been sitting in a box for weeks because, unfortunately, I had to take care of some personal stuff, surgery, things like that. Anyways, here we are. Let's get this review going. First things first, right off the gate, the way it was shipped. Unfortunately, I lost the footage where I had recorded how it was packaged, and I gotta say, this is some of the nicest packaging I've seen. It was encased in foam and basically, like, you name it. It was packed so well. I know a lot of people have been having issues with the broken glass doors or broken feet, but in my case, I got lucky with the shipping. It was just, like I said, very well packaged, and I could not have been happier with how this was. Now, the Creality K2 Plus has a build volume of 350 by 350 by 350, and this thing is just absolutely massive, dwarfing my K1 Max. Right out the gate, I went ahead, set it all up, got it where I wanted it, and I wasn't going to move it. This thing weighs, I would have to say, roughly 80 pounds, maybe even 90 pounds. And I tell you, you don't understand the scale because this thing is just so massive, but it is, so far, in my opinion, been one of the best printers I've had so far. Now, the one nice thing about this one is it's very easy to set up. It's the calibration sequence, just like the K1 Max or the K1 or the K1C, typical setup. But the only problem with this one is the fact that this one takes roughly 15, 20, maybe even 30 minutes to actually calibrate because it's so large. It does a bunch of point inspections on the bed, making sure everything is level, and it's just time consuming. It's not the end of the world. Yeah, it maybe takes a couple extra minutes, but in the process of starting a print, it does the same thing. So it does take a little bit of extra time, unfortunately, before starting a print, but in reality, it's probably for the best because it is such a larger build volume. It just wants to make sure that everything is lined up properly and there's no issues. After unpacking, one of the most impressive things that I have seen with this printer, honestly, is not the printer itself, but it's actually the repair kit that comes with it. This thing is hard plastic. This thing is it's great. I can't tell you how impressed I am with this thing. And it comes with a bunch of basically, it comes with your glue stick, nippers, things like that, and even comes with an assortment of attachments for a screwdriver. Very impressed with how this repair kit came with. Now, the only thing opposite of this was I was a little nervous when I unboxed it because it comes with a bunch of spare parts, which made me a little nervous, thinking, is this thing going to break on me immediately? Is this not going to break on me immediately? I am not sure, but when this little box here, when you open it up, it has repair boards. It has all these parts, all these smaller parts that made me nervous, but you know, maybe they just sent those because that's what they wanted to send, and maybe these are just the parts that are prone to fail. I'm not sure. I will worry about that when that time comes. The other nice thing too is it came with a half a spool of their Hyper PLA. Now, I don't typically print in a bunch of PLA these days because I tend to make droids like Huyang over here, and I typically print in PETG. But I went ahead and used up the PLA that came with the machine just to see how it does, and I'm very happy with how the PLA looked. Now I'm going to reprint these parts because I prefer them to be in PETG just because these are Droid parts, but I also wanted to throw larger prints at this machine. Now, anyone can print a Benchy, anybody can do anything along those lines, but I tend to build larger droids, and I want this machine to build, I want it to basically print what I want it to print. So with that said, now I went through and made sure this thing was heavily tuned. Now, it's all touchscreen, just like your K1 Max and your K1C. Everything's pretty straightforward. But what I like about this one is there's even a PID tune that I don't remember seeing on a K1 Max, but there's an option for that. So you can PID tune the nozzle on that machine. And I went ahead and did that a couple different times. Now, the reason being is it's still a Creality printer, and Creality from their past has not always been the best. Uh, Not saying that this machine is falling into that category, but roughly because of the past with the Ender 3 Pros and the CR10s, learning to rebuild these things because getting those printers from them were not the best. Um, so I wanted to make sure that I went through, calibrated this machine numerous times. Now I ran the calibration probably 4 or 5 different times just to make sure that it was good to go. I ran the PID tune a couple of different times because, like I said, I print in PETG and I want this machine set up for what I want to print in. And I can't stress that enough. And I think that's why I'm having such good success with this printer. Now, on a side note, I have been seeing a lot of people complaining about this machine. It's not working like it should out of the box. And I think the issue is everybody is treating this like a bamboo printer. This is not a bamboo printer, and I cannot stress this enough. Creality is Creality. You need to put in the time and effort and calibration because this is not going to print exactly like you want it, thinking you're getting a bamboo. I said what I said. Bamboo is probably one of the top of the line, and all these companies are probably trying to get caught up and catch up to that company, and they're getting there. But I cannot stress this enough. So now let's talk pros and cons. Pros: big build volume, 350 by 350 by 350. I love it. It's perfect for what I'm doing. As you can see, my Stormtrooper right there is actually the Home Depot one, but I've got some upgraded items I'm going to be printing on that machine for this Stormtrooper. I'm I may have to replace some parts on Huyang. I'm not sure, but I also have in the background there, which is actually around the corner behind the Stormtrooper, is another droid. And I'm literally just putting this machine to the test. And so far, it's been phenomenal. Uh, Ever since the tune, it's printing beautifully. It prints fast. It runs beautifully on Orca Slicer, which I'm now using. I have tried it on the Creality Slicer. It does okay. Um, I'm a person that prefers Orca at this point. It runs beautifully, and I can't be happier with how this machine works. Now the enclosure is great. I have not yet tried ABS or ASA just yet, but those are on my list as well. Um, and I also plan to order a different flex plate for it. But other than that, this machine I have no issues with at all, except for a couple things. It's a weird spot to put the USB stick. I'm not sure why they just put it up top, almost in the middle. I feel like if you're not paying attention, you're going to hit it, bump it, possibly even break it. And, especially if you're in a rush, you're trying to change out filament. I'm not sure if that's just the best idea for it. Now, I will eventually get this thing rooted and put it on, with my Orca slicer and all that. And I won't have to worry about using the USB. But if you don't want to do that, you just prefer using the USB, which occasionally I do, it's just a bad spot. I'm not really sure, again, their mindset. Now, the other flaw that I don't like about this, there's actually two more flaws. Another one is the spool. It's still, for some reason, I'm not sure why all these companies decided to put all of these spool holders on the back of these machines. I'm not really sure, but we'll make that another whole video. But this one's a little bit of an improvement. It did include a metal bracket to where you can mount the spool on the side, but you still have to feed it in through the back. Now, there's got to be a better way. I'm not sure what it is. And if I did, I'd be making 3D printers, but I don't. And, it is what it is at this point. I have a feeling that maybe they looked into some other spots and it just wasn't the proper way. But the way this one is set up, it is a little bit easier because the PTFE tube comes down out the side, connects to the bracket, and it's much easier to install a spool of filament than it has been where you have to reach around the back, feed it, retract, extrude, all that mess. So I will say it's a little bit of an improvement, but I'm still not quite happy with the whole thing. But it is what it is. Now the last option that, not really an option, but the last con that I'm not a fan of is when it powers down. If you finish a print, the bed stays in place, it cools down like it does for all the other printers. But when you power it down, the bed drops, and it doesn't drop straight all the time. And I don't like that at all, because now the problem is you got your bed all crooked, or it could drop straight, but if it drops crooked, then you got to calibrate it again, because it's now going to be not calibrated properly, because the bed has either gone like this or like this, and you got to push it manually down so that way everything is lined up properly again, which then in turn you have to calibrate the machine. And maybe you don't have to calibrate the machine. I do it just because it's, again, a Creality, and there's no telling what would happen if I chose not to calibrate it, if I push it down and make the bed not you know calibrated like it was supposed to be. So those are my three flaws on this machine. um, Again, just my personal preference. I think they have some updating to do on this machine. I certainly hope in a future update on the firmware that maybe when the print finishes, the entire bed will go all the way down to the base, and it won't have that issue of just dropping, making the bed all wonky, crooked. However, again, that's just my honest opinion. Now, here's my final thoughts on this machine. Now, first things first, I spent my own money on this machine because I wanted this, and I wanted to do my own personal review. Now, I don't have a huge following here on YouTube, but I do decent on other stuff. But I'm switching over to the long form stuff these days. And so because I'm doing this for myself, I just wanted you guys to know that they did not send me this. This was not something Creality sent me. This was something that I purchased out of pocket. Now, that being said, this printer, could this be a printer that's great for a beginner? It potentially could be. I would not recommend this for a beginner printer. Reason being is calibration, PID tuning, and the cons that it's got with it. The bed leveling, the dropping, the bed not dropping level, the weird spot for the USB. Again, these are all going to be rookie mistakes that people aren't going to pay attention to, not realizing you've got to do this. Now, I think it still has the potential of being an amazing machine, which I still think it is, if you're experienced enough in knowing the flaws that this is probably going to come with, knowing you're going to have to tinker with this a little bit, and kind of going from there. I do not see this being an out of the box ready to print machine. I think it needs to honestly have a little bit of work done to it, and that is the calibration sequencing like I've done, and the PID tuning, and all this, all the other stuff that I have done to this machine. Like I said, is it overkill? Maybe. I'm not sure. But again, I think it's a phenomenal printer, and I'm very happy with the outcome that this has printed out for me so far. Um, I still think it is not a beginner printer, and uh, this is something that you would upgrade to after you get a little bit of experience. And I'm not going to talk about who is the best printer for a beginner. I can make another video on that. But my opinion, this thing is phenomenal. It's a great printer when you get it dialed in. It is not a beginner printer, and that's just my opinion on this, because I know there's so many people out there with all these opinions on this machine. And again, I'm basing everything off of my experience, and I do not recommend this as a beginner printer, but I could certainly recommend this as a printer to upgrade to after you get a little bit more experience if you're a beginner and wanting to get into the larger stuff like droids, cosplay, or anything along those lines. So other than that, that's my quick review on this printer. I cannot wait to see what else I can print with this thing and other projects that I've got coming up for this year. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please hit me up in the comment section down below. I'll link everything else into the description down below for the website, everything else that I tend to use for my filaments or Droid files or anything along those lines. So I'll make sure I have all that info down below. But again, any questions, comments, concerns, hit me up and I will catch you guys later.